Hey guys, I'm Iffy, one of your co-hosts. Thank you so much for tuning into the Get Paid to Live podcast, where we explore how to intentionally design a life where you live first and get paid second. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you work for someone else, or you're just curious about how to create your dream life, in these episodes you'll find the inspiration, the tips, and the motivation on how you can navigate that process through our honest reflections as new entrepreneurs. We have such a juicy episode today, and I can't wait to dive in. But before we do, we want to take a few minutes to tell you about a new end-to-end recording and podcasting platform that can help you find your dream audience and customers called Riverside. It has such a beginner-friendly interface, and it's super intuitive even from the first time that you go in. This way you can spend less time tinkering with fancy editing softwares and spend more time clarifying your message, what actually matters. It's powered by AI to cut out speech breaks, create clips automatically, and transcribe your videos. So no more manual captions. These are just a few of the many features. Personally, some of my favorites are the high quality recording features, the magic clips, the captioning, and the teleprompter screen that comes up when you're recording. We've used a high quality recording to host 2 international guests virtually, and it was so easy for them to join, set up. All they had to do was press a button and they were brought into the studio at the max quality for their computers and audio. You can even record up to 4K and adjust the audio pre or post production to make it sound like you're in a studio. I love using the chat features, the script, and the teleprompter to stay on top of discussion points. And it's not just for podcasters. If you want to edit long or short form video for Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube Shorts, or even host a live stream, it's got you covered. They have so many fun features to play around with. You can even add in customized branding and animate your captions so they move when you're speaking. And lastly, with the Magic Clips feature, we're able to make 10 plus pieces of content from one episode in literally just 1 second. I'm not kidding. You press a button and it creates these different pieces of content for you about the juiciest parts of your episode. So if you're ready to pull the trigger and get your content out there with a frictionless editor and recorder, be sure to use the code IFOMA, which is IFEOMA, to get 15% off your paid plans. And biggest of all, thank you so much to Riverside for sponsoring today's episode. Without further ado, let's get into today's conversation. Hey guys, welcome back to the Get Paid to Live podcast.
Wow, season 3, baby.
Season 3, baby. Okay, if you saw the last episode, you know that we are probably going to be switching to our last few episodes. We're going to be switching to like numbers, so we're not doing seasons anymore. Oh, you're so sad. I feel like seasons was when I was like, is this going to last? Like, are we going to still do this? But we're doing it. We're doing it. Yes, we are. Should we just say who we are for the people who are new?
Sure, go for it.
I'm Iffy.
You want to give a little more for the newcomers?
I am 27. I am a
I'm 27. I'm a Pisces.
I'm a Pisces.
I love fun.
Yeah.
I love freedom.
We should introduce each other.
No.
Okay. I'm a creator and entrepreneur. Obviously, as you can tell from this podcast, my main mission in life is just to live life, vibe, and get paid to do it. Yeah. And last year, after freelancing for so long and kind of having a successful career doing it, I got laid off from my biggest and only client at the time, and I took that as a sign to be like, this is my kickstart into entrepreneurship. And this is not the first time something like that's happened. I quit my job in 2020 with no plan and found my way into freelancing successfully. So I was like, I can find my way into entrepreneurship successfully. And literally the past year has just been like gap year vibe, gap year energy for me. Trying businesses, had a failed consultancy, kind of failed at being a creator, independent creator, kind of failed in a lot of ways, but I think it's led
to your current state.
To my current state. I now have a brand. It's called Sans Raison. It means without reason in French, and it's all about this, very similar to the Get Paid to Live podcast, but it's very much about going after things without having the reason first, because usually that comes on your journey. Just really getting people to start. Young, ambitious people. We're still working on the segment. People to go after their dream life, go after their vision.
Yeah. And they don't have to be young either.
And you don't have to be young either. Exactly. So, who are you?
What a great introduction.
Are you sure? Or did you read that on a script?
No, it was good. Let's see.
Who are you, Shaw?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
So I'm Shaw. Yikes. I'm Shah, and if I were to boil it down, I teach people AI. I do it on YouTube. I write articles, and then recently started doing this for companies where I do private workshops. Yeah, so I do the private workshops for companies, but also working on something super top secret these days for consumers. So more on that later.
We have a gatekeeper in town?
Yeah, keep up with my socials. No, it's in development. It's too early to tell.
Speaking of developments, let's give a little bit of an update, because the last time that we were at Remo, we were...
That was the last podcast?
No, it was like episode 4 or 3 or 4 of the last season.
Yeah.
But that was also like 5 months ago. I don't know. Something crazy like that.
A lot has happened.
A lot has happened.
Okay, so what are the main differences between Iffy 5 months ago and today?
Between then and now, oh my God. The brand, I feel like, is starting to get a lot more clarity in terms of like who it's serving, which is huge. I think any ambitious person struggles, and who like doesn't already have a successful company or brand or whatever. Number one struggle is, what am I selling? Who am I selling it to? Because you have all this energy. It's like all this pent up energy. You don't know where to direct it to. And that was my biggest struggle. But I was like, fuck it. Like, I don't know if I can cuss in this episode.
Can't cuss.
But F it. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to cuss anyway. No, I'm going to go after it anyway, which is literally the whole essence behind the brand. Do it anyway. Do it first, then come back later, fill in the details. But that was the most stressful part. So I think now I'm starting to like develop a community. Like, and it's really been through one-on-one interactions and also posting on social media, like both at the same time. But God, Q2, it felt like this brand is going nowhere. I have no idea what I'm doing. It was post-launch. I launched my first products. They were a bit, looking back, it wasn't all over the place. It was just no one asked for it.
Right.
I think that's
the unvalidated.
Yeah, it was unvalidated.
And I think a lot of people, that's what they think in business. They have these ideas and they immediately go to launch.
Exactly. And I was like, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to take time to, I don't know, I thought I was doing the validating, but I really wasn't. I was still launching.
Yeah, you're like, I'm going to do this regardless. This is just a formality at this point. This validation I'm doing is just a formality.
Yeah, I think, you're right. I feel like that's kind of what I was thinking subconsciously. First of all, I didn't even know how to validate something. And I think some people don't talk about that until I read this book. Noah Kagan, shout out.
Whoa.
$1 Million Weekend. I highly suggest everybody read it. This like...
What hour are you on right now?
2 of the audiobook, but I keep reading.
No, because you started your $1 Million Weekend on Friday.
I did. Technically, I started the validation process, and you only have 48 hours to validate a product. Like, that's the whole thing in the book. I don't know, I'm something, but it's a good signal. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into it yet.
Yeah.
But I started reading that book. I'm a gatekeeper too. I started reading the book. And I was like, this is how you validate something. And I don't even think I knew what validating means until somebody broke it down in a way that's very, very practical. Like your dog can do this. So anyway, that's been the biggest difference between then and now in Sans in terms of my brand. YouTube, I am finally monetized. I feel like a few videos are popping off like literally 5-6 months later. It's insane how the algorithm works. So that's been really nice. And I think obviously just with the exposure, you get more people who are like you, who can also funnel into my community. What else has changed? We got a first sponsor of the podcast.
For this episode.
As you can tell, which I never expected, especially at our size. So it's just...
At our small size.
At our minuscule, insignificant...
Can't even see the subscriber count.
You have to zoom in, and you still can't see it. I didn't even think that would happen, but like, I just feel such a strong energy with the Get Paid to Live community mantra. Like, I feel like the people in the comments and just like people who have talked to us really find value in the episodes, and it's just like, yes, like I want to harness that energy into something, you know?
Before I go, a question came to mind on validation. What's the biggest shift in your mind from old Iffy, how she saw validation, to how you view validation at this point.
Ooh, that's a good question. What's the difference that I see in validation between old Iffy and Iffy now? Actually, this is a great question because I have thoughts. I was thinking about this in the shower literally the other day. I was like, I thought business, it's still hard, but I thought business and making product was this like guessing game. That's
genius.
just how, yes, you just have to,
Divine
it's kind of
it.
fixed. My mindset was a little fixed about it. It was
You either
like,
got it or you don't.
got it or you don't. Some people, the thing that they just want to make and have this energy to make, I was like, they just either hit it big or that's just not right for the market right now. Yes, that can be true, but that's not what validating means. You know what I mean? I thought validating means you put it out and people want to buy it. But I didn't think that, like, I didn't think about the prereq. What do you do before even that happens? You know, I was just kind of thinking, like, it's just this, validating means you are willing to do the work. You're willing to look for the suppliers. You're willing to do all the steps. I thought that's what validating meant on a subconscious level, when that has nothing to do with validation. That's just the execution of a validated idea.
Right.
And also, partly why I thought that way is because I had heard this advice, like validate your idea, do this, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, a lot of that advice had to do with like, do what the customer wants you to do. And why I kind of steered away from that was because I was like, if I just end up doing what the customer wants, like it's just complete customer product or service or whatever, I have no passion. What if I don't enjoy it? What if I don't know anything about what they want? You know, I thought I didn't want to be like the tech bro who's just finding what's hot in the market and making a cooking, cookware just because it's hot right now. You know, I didn't want to do that. So I thought you either had to do that or you don't. You either just have a really good product or you don't.
So there was like a dichotomy between like what people wanted and what you wanted.
Exactly.
And there was no
I couldn't figure out how to overlap the two, or I didn't even think, I was like, you either overlap or you don't. And it's like, I think you just need to get the perspective to find the overlap.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the best of both worlds. Where, sure, maybe it's not the thing that you think is like the top thing you want to do, because we all have like our vision and it's usually we're like very far from it. So sure, it's not that. I kind of jumped straight to that vision. I was like, I want Sans to be this elevated high-end brand. I want it to be like retail, so I need to have the coolest stuff. I went to doing what the cool brands do already.
You went too far.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing you have to realize about validating now. Start with what you have.
Yeah.
Start with what you got. Like I always say this in terms of content creation too. You can't necessarily look at the big creators and be like, I'm going to replicate what they do. They didn't start there.
Yeah.
They started somewhere else and it looks completely different from where they are now. And they are doing that now because they're big and they can. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
it's different strategies for different levels.
So I think that was the biggest difference. And now I'm like, it's more of like a little bit of a formula. It's also kind of more scientific, and that used to kind of scare me. But it's 10 times. What I was thinking about in the shower was that, wow, it's so much easier this way.
Yeah.
Because I was literally every time, like I have a video about like this whole process of me building this brand, and I was like crying, and I'm like, the reason I was crying and all this stuff is because I'm like, what if it doesn't work? Now it's not, what if it doesn't work? I know people want it. They literally said they want it. So that's so much less pressure on me to create something, and people, and I put so much work into it, people don't like it. It's because now they're giving me the answers. It's like looking at the review before the test. And a lot of people are like, no, I'm just going to take the test. And they're stressed. Of course, you don't know what's going to be on the test.
Right.
You know? So it's like, I think thinking about it the other day, I was like, I didn't even know that there was another option. I didn't even think that this was an option at the time, but I was so glad that I found this option, because now I can see how people create successful businesses consistently over and over and over again. Yeah. Long answer, but yes.
And I'll just like follow up on it. It reminds me of a lot of these indie hackers on Twitter and X.
Okay.
So I was watching a podcast last night with Lex Friedman and this guy named Peter Levels.
Okay. What a cool name.
Yeah. So anyway, he was like this digital nomad, and he's like the prototypical indie hacker on Twitter. So basically, he's all about how can I build this startup or this product as fast as possible.
Wow.
And the validation is if people buy it. So
okay, after he's built it.
Yeah, he built it as fast as possible.
Oh, like, I see. Like very MVP.
In a few days.
Yeah.
He'll build the whole product, the whole website in a few days. And if people buy it, that's the validation. If people don't buy it, okay, I'm just going to go on to the next thing.
Interesting.
So he did this thing, it's like 12 startups in 12 months. And he built a startup every single month. I think that's a really interesting approach to validation because you're just going as fast as possible. You're just iterating as fast as possible. So that's cool. And it's the strongest signal because there's always a weakness to just customer interviews. The signal you really want is if someone's going to give you money.
100%.
If you're talking about business, at least, you know. So that's that's the only follow-up. That's what came to mind when you were talking about the validation stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's good because that's exactly what he says in the book. He's just like, if you can't, Noah Kagan, he's like, if you can't get, your first 3 sales and get paid in the first 48 hours of you basically pre-selling it, without any landing pages, before building anything. You're just literally selling the idea. And if someone is willing to give you money for words on a screen,
that's validation.
Or just verbal confirmation, I think or I guess just verbally expressing the idea, I think you're onto something.
I'll say this for me, 5 months ago, I was walking away from consulting because I was working at Toyota full-time as a data scientist, and then my plan was to leave that job and just to do freelancing consulting. So I did that for about 6 months.
Yeah.
Which brought me to about 5 months ago. And then I realized I don't really enjoy doing that work. One of the hard things for working for someone else, like working a full-time job, is I'm putting so much energy and attention towards solving other people's solving other people's problems and achieving other people's goals.
Yes.
And it doesn't really make sense. Like, why can't I just put that same amount of effort, energy, attention into my own problems and goals? Even though freelance, I felt was a great stepping stone, it was a great thing to do right after leaving a full-time job. In the long run, it just doesn't really make sense for me because it's just another version of trading time for money. That's where that was at. And then 5 months ago, I was like, you know what? My content's working. That's what's making me the most revenue. So let me just double down on it. And so I doubled down and basically all the KPIs, like revenue, all that kind of stuff, either stayed the same or went down. So I was like, okay, so this isn't
it's not working out.
the right thing to do. But now I've kind of realized the obvious, and I think that's the kind of thing I feel with entrepreneurship and kind of figuring out which direction to go in, is that the information has always been there. You're just not tuned into it. And I feel like that's what it was like for me. I just wasn't tuned into it, even though I've known what I know now for a long time. I just wasn't I wasn't looking at it. I wasn't paying attention to it. I wasn't receiving it. I wasn't interpreting it correctly. It's kind of like the
signal noise.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was noise before is now like, oh wait, that's actually
a signal. That's an opportunity.
Yeah. And the analogy that I always tell you is like it's a revolving sushi bar, and it's constantly opportunities and signal and noise passing you by, and it's always the same and the same volume, but what changes is your eye, is your taste, is your judgment, your ability to pick the right thing off the conveyor belt. So anyway, the direction I'm going in now is like more of an education business, and the signal was that people love my YouTube channel, and everyone who reaches out to me is the majority of people from YouTube. So it's like, okay, obviously people like how I explain things.
Yeah.
And that's that's what people always tell me, is like, you explain this so simply, I'm not technical at all, and you helped me understand it, like you have such a great ability to explain this hard technical thing so that anyone can understand it. So I'm like, okay, that's that signal. It's like this strong signal. So how can I turn that into a business, a product, a service that isn't trading time for money is more allows me to like retain equity and kind of the IP and all that. And so that's where I landed on these workshops, custom AI workshops for businesses. And so that's kind of allowed me to get a product, view it as a product or a service. So let's just call it, like I have this service, but it's not like freelance where it's always something new. Like it's more predictable. Even though it is custom, there's a lot of aspects that is copy paste because a lot of people want the same kind of thing. It's just like little
Slight
tweaks. But then the sales pipeline is streamlined because it's just the same process. Like we hop on a call, I set up the custom outline of the workshop. So it feels more like a business as opposed to just like freelancing, trading time for money. So there's good signals there. And then, so that's like a B2B offer because I'm selling it to businesses. But I'm also thinking of a B2C offer. It's like, okay, how can I repackage this stuff in a way that I sell it directly to consumers? And I think that would also help with the B2B stuff because, okay, maybe a director or a VP or some, manager or something, they're not sure they want to bring me into their company, but they're willing to like take a course, you know what I mean? And so that kind of gives them a flavor. And then if they learn something, they're like, okay, we got to get Shaw to come give a workshop at the company.
I see.
And it's all connected because it also helps the YouTube because, it gives me content ideas and I make videos and then the videos attract customers.
It's all aligned.
It's all aligned. It's all connected. So it finally clicked, even though I could have done this a year ago.
No, I was just going to say, like, isn't it crazy? Like, this is all of the same ingredients. Yeah. Another analogy that you always tell me is like the cake analogy, where it's like, or the baking. Something about like making food or whatever. But let's just say a cake. You have all the same ingredients. It's the same stuff that goes into a cake. The sugar, the flour, the milk,
it's like
whatever. Cooking.
Yeah, it's cooking.
Whatever you're cooking. But it's knowing the ratio of how much.
Yeah, how to bring it together.
How much of this sugar you need. How much of the milk you need. And then that's when you're like, wait, this tastes perfect. Like, this is the recipe. Yeah. And that's when you come across that product or service. You're like, this works. I love this. People love this. Yeah. I can do this. Yeah.
It's like an ingredient list isn't sufficient to make a meal. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
It's more than just the ingredients. And that's where, that's where the skill comes in and the taste and the judgment comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. And which I think is so ironic, like, for our episode today, because we're talking about how aligned, I guess, we feel, or how aligned things are getting. And it clearly did not start off this way, even though
just a few weeks ago.
Literally like a week ago, I was like, F. I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Nothing makes sense. Is this podcast going to last? Is my YouTube, what am I talking about on YouTube? What am I selling? Is the IRS going to come after me? I can't remember if I've talked about my IRS situation, but if you know, you know. I'm out, the feds are after me. I'm kidding. But
You're fucking Drake right now.
Didn't pay my taxes, I'm too turned up. That's literally how I feel. Like, I couldn't describe it better. But literally, like, a few weeks ago, was like, what is my company going to do for people? Like, how can it
What problem is it going to solve?
Yeah, what problem is it going to solve? Like, in my Q3 goals video, I was just like, I'm tired of, like, wandering around and hoping and wishing. Like, I want to solve people's problems. I have all this energy. Like, what do I do with it? And just like you, if you're, like, the education business and people, requesting you to, like, explain things, like, break down these technical topics, the number one thing that people come to me for, it's never been different. Like, literally since the day I left my company in 2020, random people popping up, high school, corporate even, church, random people from all parts of my life come to me when they hate their job or they're curious about hating their job and wanting to quit. Like, there's usually it's usually pretty much the same. And I always tell Shine, I'm like, somebody reach out to me. I haven't talked to them in like years. I watched your video about how to quit. I hate my job. I want to quit. How do I leave? How do I start doing what I want to do? I'm tired of living a life that doesn't feel like mine. These are all missions and themes of San.
Yeah.
And what's so funny to me is that I was like, I knew that people would come to me for that. And I was like, that'd be really cool to like kind of give people a guide on like how to do it. But I never really felt convicted enough. And one, I didn't want to take the responsibility of like telling someone what to do. Because I'm the guinea pig, like I've told you guys many times before. I don't care. I obviously don't have so much regard for my life in terms of like, I'm so terrified to do this. Like
Or like you care what people think.
Yeah, I just like, if I want something, I'm going to do it. So I don't really care to put myself in a risky situation, I guess.
Right. To be uncomfortable.
And I've never met, other than you, even though like you have a different vibe with it, I've never met somebody who is exactly like me in that way. So I'm like, oh, if I give people advice, they're going to be like, oh, fuck that, I'm not doing that. Because like I quit my job with no money. Like people don't do that. And every time I say that.
You probably shouldn't do that.
You shouldn't do that. But if I saw someone like me with my same intentions and ambitions, I'd be like, do it. You know what I mean? Like
you just like whisper to them.
I'm like, do it. I don't really care. Like I'm not like a worst case scenario, anxiety stricken person. So I always felt like, oh, if I give people advice, they're just gonna find it useless, But I have a lot to say. I mean, I started this podcast because I wanted to give unsolicited advice all the time.
Talking.
Female is. I'm sorry. Honestly, this guy, I love him because he's like made a new inside joke between us. I don't remember his name. I think it's George. I could be making that up. But he said female is rambling, and I've never felt more understood. Female is overtaking hubby, and there's nothing more true than that. Anyways, I just didn't think I could give people practical advice on that. Also, I'm not a financial person, and everyone's worried about money. I'm not good at math, and it's gotten me this far. I'm just, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, it's been around, and I didn't see it as the signal. I saw it as like a potential, but I don't know. But the problem with San was that it wasn't specific enough.
Yeah, it was too vague.
It was too vague. It was a dream life and follow your dreams, and like even those words, it just kind of washes over people. They're like, okay, what the fuck do I do about that? And I knew that, but I'm like, I just can't explain it yet. I didn't know how to do it.
Words, And
then I was just like, literally, I don't know how this. I was actually thinking about this for when we were writing the notes. Like, I don't know how this idea of like a roadmap came about.
You don't know?
Did you?
What was I telling you, Iffy?
Yeah, you said
I
something.
said business. It's not about money. It's about energy. And energy comes in many different forms.
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious form is money, because people had to expend energy to get money, and then they give it to you to solve their problem. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So money is just a form of energy. But there are other forms of energy, like hitting like on a TikTok, like writing a novel in the comments, like going out of your way to find someone's email address in some obscure part of their website and sending them a thoughtful email about how much their video resonated with them.
Yeah.
These are all forms of energy, and they can be translated into one another. You just have to figure out how to make that conversion happen.
And you told me this before. Again, I just wasn't seeing.
It was noise.
It was noise. It wasn't like noise, but it was still a buzz.
That's an interesting concept.
Right? Like, but I'm saying, what's the thing that gave me the idea to do it? I don't remember exactly what sparked. I don't know, because it was this week.
But it was people reaching out to you.
I did have an email. We went on vacation. Yeah. Okay. I think there's a couple of things. I went on vacation, which I highly recommend every quarter. Yeah. At the very least, you're taking a break, even if it's like a ghetto one. Do it. Who cares?
We spent like $300
for
both of us.
For 5 days. And so we took a break. We went to Portland. We came back home. For some reason on the plane, I don't know if Mercury was in Gatorade again. But I literally, like, this sounds so dramatic, but I think I like died and like was born again.
Resurrected.
Not in a like religious way. I'm just saying this like
reincarnation.
Sure. It kind of felt like a butterfly, like a caterpillar, like I shed skin and I'm like
Metamorphosis
Metamorphosis
by Hilary Duff.
Hilary Duff. That's what I feel like it was more like that. And it happened when I was just like, everybody does on the plane. You're like looking through your pictures and you're like, I literally was just like, oh my God, that past version of me is just, she's dead. Like, I don't know what, it's like I was having a funeral on the plane, like for her. And then I came, maybe the rebirth was part of this.
Yeah.
I got an email while I was in Portland about a lady who, it kind of felt like if I stayed in corporate.
Yeah. A possible reality.
A possible reality, like being written to me. And she was in the same field I was. She basically was the same career trajectory that I had if I stayed. And she was emailing me about how she was just like, I saw your video about how you knew it was time to leave corporate. And I just like completely resonated. She was like, do you have any advice for me? In Portland, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Then I thought nothing of it. I was literally like, whoa, that's wild. And I was like, I'm going to send her a thoughtful email when I get home. That was it. I guess I had this rebirth on the plane. I got home. I think that video started to keep going. It's been going up, but it was starting to like jump. Like comments were like multiple a day. And I was like, okay, people are feeling it. And I don't know what it was where I was just, I remember. This makes sense. I have been interviewing for jobs. That's another update.
Oh, that's what it was.
I've been interviewing.
Going back to freelancing.
Going back to freelancing because money is gone. It's not even running out. It's just not there. And so I was like, I gotta fucking like apply to jobs. So I've been applying to jobs, interviewing, and I was kind of getting far in this interview process with this one company. And I was like, oh, this would be a really good gig because then I don't have to worry about my tax bill and the feds coming after me. And I was like, great. And low key, by the last interview, I was like, I don't think I kind of know when people are vibing with me, and I don't think it was like for sure. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. It hit me when I was trying to explain to them how much I could help them and their company and their stakeholders so much that I was just like, why wouldn't I why am I trying to prove to them how much good I can do if you just wait? Like, I know my company's small. I haven't done that much significant work in the past, but like, I can do this for you and your company and your stakeholders. I can elevate their content. I can do this. And I was like, I can do that for me. Like, what the hell? Like, it just kind of hit me. And I was like, I need to sell a product yesterday. I'm tired of this interview process. I'm tired of like having to like, even though it was a more aligned job, it was still like putting on a performance. Right. I was like, you know what? I need to figure out how to do this for myself. And I was like, let me look at the most obvious things around me. I have people in my DMs asking me about this subject. I have people in my comments pouring their heart out on a video that has less than like 15,000 views. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm making something. I don't care. I want to figure out how to make up this money that I need by the end of the quarter through a different means. You know, and I don't want to have to rely on people. And I think that was the spark that was like, make your own product. And so that's the benefit of uncomfortable situations. Yeah,
it forces you to grow, find a new way. Adapt.
Expedites that whole process so much faster. And I was like, fuck it, let's do it. And so I was like, I can create something for this. So that has led to me like, I'm making a roadmap of how to quit your job in 90 days. If it's out by the time this is out, which it should be, well, maybe not. I will link it as soon as it's ready, but like follow me on social so you can keep up if you need this, because I'm like, you know what? I'm not saying this is the only way to quit, but this is what I would do. And so many people need this solution. Like, and when I started this weekend to validate it, $1 Million Weekend. At the same time, I'm reading $1 Million Weekend. You see how this movie is being produced. I was reading the book, and he just gave these clear, practical tips. And I was also reading that on the plane to Portland. I was like, man, this is good. And so when that hit me, I was like, I'm done giving my energy, like you were saying earlier, to other people. I was like, I'm going to put this into something to sell, and I'm going to validate it, really validate it this time, by asking everybody who's been reaching out to me. And what I did, crazy thing, because of this, like literally a few days ago, I put on that video, because unfortunately on YouTube you can't DM people, you can't speak to them other than comment. So I pinned a comment on that video, and I was like, hey, I know so many people are dealing with this issue. If you want I'm thinking of making a roadmap. If you want this, I'm happy to share it with you. Here's my email. And I was like, okay, let's just see what happens, right? I literally I feel like it was 4 hours later, I had an email and some girl was like, I loved your video, like send me this roadmap. And I was like, talk about validation. And
There's energy there.
It's energy. And I was like, I don't know, but I just feel like this. I felt like I was finally feeling what I was supposed to feel as an entrepreneur. Like, I have the tools to help you. You want this. I want this. Let's do it. Let's make the exchange. So that's been really cool. And I just feel like, we both kind of hit this peak.
Yeah. Coming
this week.
Portland, yeah.
Yeah, which is so crazy. So you guys are getting real-time action. Real-time action. So anyway, that was our long-ass update. That was like the entire episode. So although this alignment has been amazing, I don't think any of this would have started if we weren't confused as fuck like 2 weeks ago. And I think that's a huge, huge thing that I see, especially now I'm talking to people who are like me, who are ambitious, they don't know what to do yet. Most of the stress and suffering comes from the inaction. Most of it comes from, I've got to get this $1 million idea all of a sudden without researching, without flopping, without failing, without experience. It's gonna come to me, and I'm just gonna sit here and wait. And then you're sitting here stressed, like, I know I'm meant to do something. I'm supposed to be famous, yo. Like, I'm supposed to do this, whatever. Yeah, if you do it, like, you can't.
But if you're sitting around,
it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think we need to talk about normalizing confusion in the process, and not only normalizing it, but like, it's the right path to take. Like, it is the rite of passage.
Right. Because I feel like in confusion lies new opportunities.
Yeah.
Lies the unknown, you know? And if you spend your whole life living in the known, corporate job, mortgage,
school,
Thursday, happy hour, you know, bachelor party, like, you know, all
Vegas.
the things, Vegas, like all the things that are known, common knowledge, like what everyone knows, like you're not going to live an unconventional life. Yeah. And if you want to be like, I'm meant to be famous, yo, that doesn't exist within the conventional. So it's going to require you to go out to the unknown, which is confusion, but turning that confusion into clarity, that's the process, you know?
Exactly.
It's the process of gaining knowledge, gaining skills, and gaining that ability to make a judgment call. This is signal, this is noise.
Exactly.
Because when you spend your whole life in this conventional box,
you have no idea.
Everything around you sounds like noise.
Exactly.
But it's not. You have to kind of venture out into that forest to kind of learn what is really signal and what is really noise based on the things that you value and the things you want.
Yes, and we talked about this, I think, in like episode 1 of season 2. Like, the only way you know that difference between the signal and the noise is through knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
And trying, like, physically, mentally, being there, showing up to the space where you can practice and learn. And speaking of that, I feel like that along many thoughts, there's like a lot of like myths around making it or producing it. There's so many myths, and like I'm just gonna name a few that we can talk about. Like we mentioned, that the clarity comes before action.
Right.
Actually, it's the other way around.
Clarity comes through action.
Yeah, I think along with that, there's like this idea that you stumble across something and then you can start putting all your eggs into that basket. When I think it requires a little bit of commitment, actually a lot of commitment up front. Exactly. A lot of investment up front. Then, which is time, money, energy, action. Then you come to that clarity like we were kind of talking about, which this is just the beginning. I feel like that holds so many people back because what does it perpetuate? Waiting? What is it
if you're waiting, you're not learning.
Exactly. And it's like, I think the biggest way to tell is like, are my thoughts, what I'm choosing to believe every day, is that creating more action or is it not?
Right.
And it can be simplified into those two things, because if we can agree that action is what produces results, everything that revolves in your day, everything around you should be promoting action. If it's promoting inaction, that's the stuff you need to start cutting out. And I can guarantee you, I had to, like old Iffy to new Iffy, she had to start cutting out those things that make her want to rot and scroll and feel bad about herself and wait around and be like, oh, and be jealous that this person came up with their idea. They're not on TikTok like you are right now. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, the waiting just promotes more waiting.
Waiting, yeah.
You know?
The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So if you spend all your time waiting or doing unproductive things and inaction, then you're going to just keep perpetuating that behavior.
Exactly. Another myth I feel like I hear a lot is like the people who have the thing, the brand, the offer, the community, they have something that I don't. There's something different between me and them. They have people helping them. They have a team. They have money. They have resources. They have a network. They have this and that. That's why they're not confused. That's why they have everything figured out. At
one point, they were probably just like you, or
just
even
like you.
further behind. Like Samuel Jackson. Like, he didn't start till late. Or like Morgan Freeman. They started very late in their careers. The Colonel Sanders. He started really
Colonel Sanders. Didn't he start like 60 or something?
Yeah, like really late.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I think this relates to the fixed mindset. And it's like,
it's an excuse.
People think that you either got it or you don't got it. But the reality is that no one is born with anything. You know what I mean? Everything that people gain is developed. Sure, there's some, aspect of like luck and natural ability. But in the long run, luck kind of washes out, and what you're left with is skill, you know? And then the people who kind of make it like the top 1% of the 1%, maybe they had that right combination of luck and skill. But most people who are quote unquote successful in any given discipline, they didn't necessarily get there just because of luck. They got there because of skill. And skill is something you have to develop through effort, through action. You know, you have to go through that discomfort. You have to go through the levels. You have to go through the bosses and learn the skills and acquire the knowledge in order to kind of be someone who's capable of doing that. You know what I mean? So if you just kind of take someone who's, runs a, let's say mid-sized company, like a 200-person company, the amount of skills they had to develop to get to that point, like you need those skills, because like even if you get there by luck, you're not going to stay there if you don't have sufficient skills to maintain it.
Exactly. It's a combination of luck and skill, because they kind of, when one is falling down, the other one can kind of like pick it up. But if you
never develop any skills, you're going to lose it all.
Exactly.
It's the same reason why lottery winners usually go broke, because they don't have the skills
to maintain it or make more of it.
To maintain it and allocate capital effectively.
Exactly. So I think one thing, I was literally just talking about this with a friend yesterday, like anytime I notice my brain is like making excuses for people, or as to why they have something, or kind of assuming something about them, or like, oh, that doesn't work, or oh, they got this because of this thing, or like they're not confused because of X. They have something that I don't. Anytime I notice my brain saying something like that, or I can't, or I won't be able to, or I'm in my situation, I immediately stop. You don't have to change the thought, but the first step is noticing how many times you think that, and just being like, is that promoting my action? Is that helping me get further in this? Is that helping my ideas become more clear by making an excuse as to why that person has a successful brand? It doesn't. Actually, what would promote more action? Why do they have a successful brand?
Be curious.
Let me be curious. What did they do to get there? That's actionable. You can look up an interview. You can look up blogs written about them and learn. And that is something that has significantly helped me in my journey now, is listening to entrepreneur stories over and over and over again. Because you start to see how not different you guys are. Like, we all
Right.
are, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, everybody, I've talked to creators of all sizes. I've talked to entrepreneurs in different points in their journey. It's basically the same shit. And I think when you think about it that way, it sounds like, oh, that sucks, but actually it's a really good thing, because that's opportunity. That means there's possibility. That means you can do it too. That means that there's something that you just don't know, that once you know it, you can be just like them. That's actually a really positive thing.
And usually you're just like one or two skills,
away.
one or two key pieces of information away from getting to that next level.
I literally just need to open this damn book that has been out for at least a year.
Which one?
$1 Million Weekend.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just
and
a
for
simple
some people,
framework.
And then for some people, they might read it and it's like too far ahead.
Exactly.
Like, it's too much of a leap. And that's fine. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's all about, like, that's the hard part. But that's part of the confusion. Because you're like confused and you're wandering around. But then when you stumble across that one or two things, you're like, oh, this
That
is what
makes
I was
sense.
missing.
Yeah.
And then that kind of bumps you up a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, to kind of put this in more like concrete terms, like when you think of like any full-time roles at like a corporation, you have like individual contributors, managers of managers, leaders, you know, and so on and so forth. Each level requires a certain set of skills. Like if you're an individual contributor, I'm going to talk about data science because that's the field I know.
Yeah.
You need a certain number of skills. You need to know how to code. You need to know how to make models. You need to know how to talk to people, and that, you know, that's enough. But then, in order to get to that next level, there's some like things you need to learn. You need to learn how to manage a team. You need to learn how to be responsible for everyone's projects, not just your own projects, you know? So these are like skills you have to learn and unlock for yourself. And then there's another level. It's like, okay, how do I learn to manage managers? And, you know, and so now that requires a whole different set of skills. And it's the same thing in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in anything that you're trying to get good at. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's levels. And the only thing keeping you at your current level is a certain number of skills.
Exactly.
Because if you had the skills, you wouldn't be at this level. Because it would be obvious.
And
you know what I mean? Oh, and let me just kind of make this point. At one point, graduating high school or like, you know, getting, kind of finishing your English essay was the hardest, most impossible task ever. But now it's a joke. You know what I mean? At one point, getting a corporate job was this impossible, hard thing.
Yeah.
Now it's trivial. You know what I mean? And one day, all the problems you're facing right now will be a joke. You know what I mean?
I know.
Because it's all about skills. It's not magic, you know? There's specific things that you can learn that will make this problem not a problem anymore.
I know. It's so good to remember that, because for me, how I think about it, when I'm like, one day this is going to seem like tying my shoes, that also makes everything you're feeling right now possible. Because I think the hardest part with confusion is that it's impossible. There's no way I'm going to figure this out. There's no way I can get through this. But you don't need to know how to get through it. You just need to know that you will eventually. You're going to have more resilience, I think, patience in the process. And what it makes me think of when you were talking about that was confusion. One, it's so necessary, like you need that, but it's also like you can kind of imagine it like a level, like the English essay, the corporate job, the problems you're going through in your business. These are all levels of your life, like relative to whatever you want to do, right? And you couldn't get to a place where getting a corporate job was easy for you unless you figured out like how to at least write a fucking essay. You know what I mean? Like these are all levels of confusion, and it makes sense at 17, 18, like that's a really hard thing for you. Like you need to really sit with it and overcome it for you to get to that next level. And it makes sense when you're 25, 27, whatever, to be going through like, you know, corporate issues and getting a job and interviewing, like mastering those skills, because that's the level you need to be at. This is all dependent on each person. I mean, it doesn't matter what age you are. Yeah. But you're not supposed to be playing in that level yet. You don't know what it requires. You don't have the skills yet.
Right.
You also, life is meant to be enjoyed. You're supposed to be enjoying this part where you're a little bit confused. And that's why we look back at our 20s or whenever, when we were kids, we were so dumb and confused, but it was fun. It was like you kind of missed that because
it was so simple.
It was simple. And that's what confusion is. It's like, it's complex at the time for you, but that's what kind of makes it fun and interesting. But later it becomes very simple. But things that are simple are not entertaining. They're just simple. And I feel like whenever you're in that state, it's complex, but that's what makes it fun. That's why there's so many things to try and so many things to do. And like, I always remind myself in this stage, like, yeah, you're confused as hell. You don't know what it's supposed to be. But if I figured it out tomorrow, this would be very boring. This is the fun part. So stay at your level. Like, you're supposed to be at that level.
Yeah. Enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Exactly. The last myth I hear, and this is kind of how I felt back to.
These are all your myths.
These are all my myths. Yeah. But I've also heard, surprisingly, a lot of people say these things too. It's like there's a right and wrong. I think that whole, first of all, just in life, this whole right and wrong concept is keeping people from enjoying their life. But there's a right way, there's a right product. There's a right way to do entrepreneurship. There's a right way to build a community. There's a right way to post a YouTube video. There's a wrong way to post a YouTube video. This will keep you in the waiting period perpetually.
Right. Because you keep trying to make it perfect or wait for the right moment, the right idea, the right
everything,
equipment or something like that. Right name. Then I feel like
right name.
That stuff will kill you. Yeah, people just wait forever. Like, I remember when I was first going to start my LLC, I wanted to come up with a name, and me and Derek, we spent hours coming up with all the worst names
in the
world. And then I eventually...
Tell them mine. I had an idea for your company.
Yeah, so the concept was like, okay, what does the company do? It's going to take data and turn it into like reality, like things that solve problems in the real world. And Iffy's really good name was Durality.
And it's
so that was the level of name. Like these are the names we're talking about. Like just and like awful.
Your name now could be, it couldn't be more practical. Like the data entrepreneurs are like
but my
Shaheen
LLC,
Talebi Ventures.
Yeah, so the name I eventually went with, I was like, okay, whatever. I just went Shaheen Talebi Ventures LLC. Just like
boom, easy.
It doesn't matter. Just
doesn't matter.
Do stuff.
And I think what's so funny is like this myth and with the other ones, they keep you in more confusion. Like they like make it longer.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have to find the right thing, or you're constantly waiting for something to come up. You're looking. People, there's also this syndrome of not only waiting but looking, searching, researching, saving, bookmarking. Stop.
Yeah.
You have enough. The most information you need is the process.
Yeah, you gotta do.
You gotta do it. You need to be physically in it. If you're looking for the right YouTube video to make one. I promise when you watch it back, you're like, that sucks, or it's good enough, or, like...
Well, it's better than no YouTube video.
Or than no YouTube video. Like, the best answer is through doing it. Yeah. And I think these things just keep you in these loops longer than you need to be. It's good to stay in your level, but I feel like these things just make you constantly in the same, like you stay in the same level for years and years and years when you're supposed to be advancing a little bit, you know, because there's endless things to be confused about.
Right. Because if you're spending all your time researching, you're not spending enough time doing.
Yeah.
And that's when you really develop the skill.
Exactly.
You know, like researching can be beneficial, but you can't. So the way I see it is that there are a few ways to learn. Consuming content or like researching, reading articles, watching videos, that's only like the first step in learning something. Like learning concepts and ideas. At some point in this journey, like you need to do, you know, you need to do the thing.
Exactly.
So you can translate these concepts into like tacit understanding. Like you need to know it in your bones. You need to know how it feels like to do it. You know, if you pick up something through concept, like just reading an article about it, you probably already learned the skill before. You
Yeah.
just needed to kind of see it in this new way.
Right.
But for something that's really new and it's going to take you to the next level, you need like that doing level of experience and exposure.
Muscle memory, if you will. And I think the main problem with this is that if you're not taking action, you're not getting information, you're not getting experience, you're not getting to practice, you're literally getting nothing. It's just giving
You're just like running in circles in
Right.
that same level.
Exactly.
You know, and
anxiety loop, perfectionist loop, procrastination loop, like you're just staying in the confusion. And I think this is the first time I think listening to Cara Lowenthal, she's a life coach, hearing her talk about confusion, how it is honestly a choice. I feel like it's a label that we give ourselves to stay in the state longer.
Yeah.
I have this option, because if you talk to confused people, again, the rest of the ingredients are always there.
Yeah.
If you talk to confused people, they have the options laid out in front of them. Usually when they're, I would say like the proud, confused people, like they're in the state, every time we talk to them, they're constantly in the same predicament. At some point it becomes just a choice to stay there because they have the same menu of things that they can choose from, but they're choosing to also stay there and keep thinking that they need to pick and see.
Keep doing the same thing
over and over again. And I think that's how you stay in this state for way too long. Generally, as an entrepreneur, you will be confused, like genuinely confused, sure. But there's confusion plus action, which gets you results even while you're in that state of picking and choosing. Right. But just sitting there and doing nothing and like looking over the same stuff over and over and researching, doing whatever, that's when I feel like confusion just becomes a choice, and it's safer for you to be there. Because you don't have to fail. You don't have to do anything wrong. You don't have to make mistakes. You don't have to pay for your investment. You don't have to do anything in that state. It's easier to be confused. And I think if you want the result as badly as you say you do, that's where you're willing to take action while being confused, which is uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to put stuff out there, to sign up for stuff when you're lost, you know? But it's good. You need it, you know?
So I feel like one of the key takeaways of this conversation is to just do.
Yeah. 100%.
And there was this line, I don't remember which entrepreneur investor said it, but it was one of these like investor guys, probably I think like Silicon Valley guys, I'm not sure who it is. In the early days, there are only two things an entrepreneur or a founder should be spending their time on. Talking to customers or developing the product. Like that's the only things you should be doing. Everything else is a distraction. Yeah. And so developing the product can be many different things. It could be posting the YouTube video, it could be writing code, it could be like literally building something, you know, putting together a course, putting together this roadmap, you know, whatever it is, or talking to customers, DMing people, calling people, talking to anyone who's willing to talk to you, and trying to kind of understand how they think, understand their problems, understand the language they use. Because these are the two things that will take you from 0 to 1.
That is so true. Like, not only through my experience, but it's like, could have just been asking. I could have just been looking at the signs, like looking at the information, and then just talking to people. Because there's nothing that beats confusion, like Noah Kagan saying in the book, by just putting it out there. Yeah. Would you buy this? Would you buy this? Yes or no? Can I have this money for this product? Yes or no? Like, if someone says no, boom, clarity. You don't need any more research.
I guess that's what that's because confusion is like ideas. Ideas can be confusing because it's like, you know, it's really not clear. Yeah. But doing action is like realization, the manifestation of ideas and concepts, and there's no confusion in reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think we brought up this example in a past episode, but it's kind of like, let's just like think of a trope, like the classic immigrant who moves to America. They don't have time to be confused about, should I have this hot dog stand or should I not? Right, yeah. They're just getting on, like imagine streets in New York, people eat hot dogs. I can sell it. Do you want it? Yes or no? Right. Let's make it cheap. Let's alter the, like, oh, no one's coming to the store or the cart today. Why not? Let's put the drinks out. You know, like, you have to iterate fast.
What typically happens is you land in this new country. You're like, okay, where are the people that look like me? You know what I mean? So you find them, you're like, okay, how do they make money? It's like, well, we sell clothes. It's like, okay, can I work for you? I'll work for, nothing. You know what I mean? And you basically are just like forced into doing
quickly.
You don't have time to think like, okay, try to strategize on like, oh, what's the best way for me to make? You don't have time to think.
Oh my God! And I was also
I
was also just talking about this last night with a friend too. Like, I think it's kind of a blessing and a curse how many options we have, especially in this generation, because we have so much access to everyone at all times. It keeps you in that confusion state longer because we were talking about how our parents, we both have immigrant parents, they didn't have that luxury. So it was just kind of like, do what you need to do to get by. At the same time, they didn't get the luxury of like, oh, I didn't even know this type of job exists.
Options
because
and opportunities.
I see so many people on the internet, I'm like, oh, you can do that, or that is possible, or I like that kind of career path. They didn't have that luxury, so they might have chosen the most, like in terms of desire and happiness, like maybe suboptimal option, but they had to get to work because they didn't have time. There was no TikTok for them to scroll on. Whereas we do we have it differently because we can look at so many options, but we get trapped in the looking and the researching and the confusion. And oh my God,
blessing and curse.
It's almost harder for us to ignore all of that so we can get to work. And I think we have to take more precautions on putting a stop to that, putting our phone away, locking it in a fucking box. Like, we have to do so many more steps to focus because we have so much distraction and too many options. And I think that's being aware of that. You are living in a different world than your parents or the people before you. To get to results that you're looking for, you're going to have to do things a little bit differently. But also know that you have more opportunity than anyone's ever had.
Yeah, than they could ever dream of.
So if you can put that discipline with the action, you can also take it to produce things that, you've never seen before.
Yeah, because like just imagining our parents, like my dad coming here with like $500 and then making it to like $1 million business. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's just say 1,000 to 1 million, so 1,000x.
Yeah.
Jump.
I know.
And so like, okay, that means I can also make a 1,000x jump. So what would that look like? You know what I mean? Just kind of, you have the opportunity, but it's just a different set of problems that you have to be willing to solve.
Another takeaway is like drill it in your brain that this is what it's supposed to be like. That's another thing I got from that life coach a long time ago, just for life in general, but you can apply it to anything. She was just like, what if you just assume, stop trying to look for the facts and fact checking this. What if you just assume that this is how it's supposed to feel? How would that affect your journey? How much less stressing would you have about your stress? How much less anxiety would you have about your anxiety? How much less anything would you have about, like, it takes so much unnecessary thinking and energy out of the way when you're like, this is what it's supposed to feel like. When you don't know how to swim and you're flapping around in the pool, you're not like, God, why am I doing this? You're just like, I've seen people do it. This is how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be awkward. And then I learned how to do it better later. And I think you have to apply that to your journey. Like, you're supposed to have flopping content. You're supposed to have, you're the only one showing up to your event. You're like the only person in your company. Like, what if that's how it's supposed to be? Because I think the more you take action, the more you start getting connected with other entrepreneurs and you realize everything you're doing is completely normal. Everything you're feeling is completely normal. Everybody else had to do the same thing. Everybody else went broke too. Everybody else was like trying to figure out how to sell anything just to get their first product out there. Like, normalize all these things and you feel way less bad about it, because feeling bad, feeling anxiety, feeling the pressure, it's a waste of time if it's not producing action, like we were saying. And I think we like to tell ourselves, if you're feeling bad about yourself, if you're feeling scared, put it into the work. Get to work then, because otherwise it's just completely useless.
What it reminds me of is like what I feel like I've been telling this to myself ever since we got back from Portland.
Oh yeah?
Which is, this is what growth feels like.
Yes.
So it's like, things are hard or confusing or uncomfortable, but that's literally growth. Like, growth is uncomfortable. It is stressful. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if you grew like 6 inches, like your skin would stretch. Like, it would be very painful if you grew very quickly.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Growth is stress. It's uncomfortable. So,
no,
but it's ultimately a good thing.
I think that's really good. Like literally, like you wouldn't expect anything different if you were physically growing. Right. So why is it when you're mentally expanding your mind and your habits and your skills? And one thing I like to like think about right now is like we're confused, but we're also feeling so aligned at the same time. And I used to think that was like I'm doing something wrong. Why am I not just feeling aligned, period? Right. Now that I just decided to live my dream life, why am I not all of a sudden just like automatically feeling aligned? But then I was like, I think this is how it's supposed to feel. Because when you look at people's stories, like I took Marie Forleo's business course where she was talking about her story. Now everybody knows her as this like mega entrepreneur. She's a speaker. She has courses. She has everything. And her stuff looks so clear. It looks so amazingly defined. And like, man, this is made for her because of her skills. Like she's just so good at this stuff. Zoom back all the way to the beginning, which is why I say study other people's paths and their stories. It makes you feel way more normal. She was a bartender. She was a hip hop dance instructor, if I'm not mistaken. What? She was a dance instructor. Oh, you knew that?
No.
Oh, you didn't? And she also was a 23-year-old life coach. So all of these things, I may have those details like slightly adjusted. I have bad memory, but it was something like that. In New York, by the way. So could you imagine her schedule? Could you imagine like her describing her business to people? They're like, so what do you do? And I think when you look at her now, you're like, oh, she was probably just speaking from birth, came up, had this YouTube channel. Like, no. You need to look back at people's beginnings. It makes you feel normal. And I think now that I've seen stories like that, I'm like, she was on the right path. Like she was doing the thing. She was giving talks for free. She was doing something, like she was headed that way. She had to kind of like reorganize, like maybe dancing is still a passion, but it's like on the weekend, it's not her full-time job, you know, or teaching, sorry. But she was still on the right path. She was a little confused back then, but she was still going in the right direction. And I think that's normal. Like it's okay to feel like you can't explain your company to someone, but you're still passionate about it, you know? So if you feel weird about that, just know that like, I literally still can't describe to you what my target audience is. I literally still don't know what we're gonna sell like next year. My brand, I'm sorry. But I'm still doing it. I'm still planning on having an event. I'm still planning on making more digital products this year. I'm still planning on doing all this stuff. You can do both at the same time.
You know the what and why, you're just trying to figure out the how.
Exactly.
I guess it kind of comes down to like, how do you make progress in whatever you're pursuing? And it really just comes down to two key things. It's repetitions and like taste, like your judgment. Like your ability to pick out the right item at the revolving sushi bar. But really, if you think about it, taste and judgment comes through repetitions and experience. So iteration. So really, it goes back to these indie hackers where I'm going to launch 12 startups in 12 months. Like, they're iterating. It's like, maybe they don't have the right judgment and they're like launching these shitty products that no one wants. But they're iterating. And through that iteration, they're gaining experience and they're developing their taste and their judgment. So later on, they can launch, like one of his products was made I feel like it made $150,000 in one day or something like that. Crazy. And like now he has products that are just making like 10, 20, 40, 50K a month, and he's multiple products. So he's making like a ton of money, and he's one guy launching these things.
Because he iterated 12 times in the year.
He iterated so fast. He developed the skills. Like he knows what he's doing. So now he has better judgment. He has the skills. And he's still learning. You know what I mean? So it just goes to show you the power of like iteration and repetitions. But really, it's both those things together. You know, because the better judgment you have, the better your iteration goes. You know what I mean? Like, let's just say you keep launching businesses until it works.
Exactly.
If you have really good judgment, you'll get it on the first shot. You know, if you have really bad judgment, maybe you get it on the 100th shot or something like that.
But judgment and your taste can be improved over time with experience. And
but you know, they're related to one another. So those, I feel like that's true for entrepreneurship, but it's true for a lot of other things. Just the reps and your judgment and your taste, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The skills.
Okay. You heard it from the big guy, kids. Do stuff, do it over and over and over again until your judgment is spot on with what you need, what the market is wanting. Yeah. So that's all we have for you today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and also thank you for putting your time and energy into this podcast. Wow. It has gotten us, like, over repeated episodes and effort and trial and error, has gotten us a small community and a sponsor. Like, that's huge.
Surprising.
Very surprising and huge for us, but I think that goes to show you what you can do when you put your stuff out there without having everything figured out.
We had nothing figured out.
I mean, you can go back to episode 0. We had absolutely nothing figured out, but because we kept showing up and we kept refining our taste over time, we've gotten to a point where now I'm like, there's no more like season this, season that. We're doing this thing.
Yeah,
you know?
Now we just got some
nice
mics and an iPhone. Like, we could fly to New York if we're traveling. Yeah. We could do another episode. And I wouldn't be surprised if this just keeps getting simpler and simpler.
I think so. And I think that's also what happened. Like, again, the complexity just goes down when you take more action.
Yeah.
Whereas I know people in my podcast video are even like, I need this and that and da da da. And it's like all ideas right now, but it's just because they haven't had the feeling of like doing it.
Once they do it, the confused ideas will become clear actions.
So do first, think second.
Philosophize
second. And if you're into this, that's all what my brand is about. So check it out.
Sans Raison.
Newsletter will be linked in the description, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Boom.
Bye.